Welcome to Soul Sync, a sacred space for women of color navigating the in-between. I'm Pamela J. Thomas, and I created this podcast to hold space for your next chapter. Let's take a breath and begin. Welcome to Soul Sync, where we pause long enough to hear the truth beneath the noise. I'm your host, Pam Thomas. Today's episode invites us into a conversation about how to navigate transitions and what are some of those spiritual tools that get us through that journey. And I'm so honored to be joined by Temeka Thompson. She's a midwife of purpose, a speaker, and author, all sorts of exciting things. But I love that midwife of purpose thing. But before we get started, what I'd like to do is have us all take a breath together. So I'm going to invite you to plant those feet firmly on the floor. Plant your sits bones where you sit down firmly on your chair. Notice that the floor and the chair are fully supported in you. Give your shoulders a little wiggle. We often carry a lot of tension there. Give your neck a little wiggle just to release the tension. And when you're ready, let's take a slow, deep breath in together. Hold it for just a second. And exhale slowly through your mouth. And if we do it one more time, take a slow, deep breath in together. And hold. And exhale slowly through your mouth. And I invite you to bring something in and let something go and be present in this conversation. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and we'll get going. Hi, Tamika. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to explore this idea of transition and transformation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I have to apologize. I didn't know where our eyes were supposed to be closed. So
You don't have to close your eyes. Maybe I didn't say it.
Okay.
It all works whatever way it works for you. It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, thank you so much for that. It has been a very interesting morning, so I definitely needed that. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Just to bring us to our center so we tend to run on the nervous energy of our bodies, and just a moment to bring yourself to your center so we can have this powerful and soulful conversation. I would love to ask you about your journey, because this is the way we start this conversation, is about sharing our journey and what moments of transition were formative for you and how you navigated them. There's so many of us, in particular Black women, in transition at the moment. It's really powerful for us to share our stories.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, I don't know how far back you want me to start with the transformation or any transformation.
What you think the important points are is what I would suggest. That's normally where you can share the most powerful lessons, as I know you know.
Right. So I will start with understanding. I know that understanding that I no longer had to be the victim of being a molested child when I was younger. It's one thing to be a victim and to move in that victim mentality and go throughout life in that space. But the moment that I realized that I was no longer the victim was a transitional point for me. Also, realizing that I am a survivor of 9/11. And again, not taking that as a victim mentality. And there were so many transitions and points inside of my life where my husband and I we were on the brink of divorce. We've been married now 27 years, praise God.
Wow, that's a milestone moment.
Yes, indeed. But at year 10 and 11, I stepped out on our marriage, and it was a shifting point for us. And through that brutal restoration, I think was the moment, and that pivotal moment in my life. If we're really talking about transitions, I think it was that moment in our lives where I realized that I needed help and I needed to be healed. There were so many things that I had brought inside of my marriage that I did not realize that I brought inside of the marriage, and so many points inside of my life that I knew that I needed healing. And so that started a journey for me to become the best version of who God created me to be. And that for me, I think, was the pivotal point for me. And that's been, oh my gosh, that's been quite some time ago. But that was the transition for me to no longer walk in the victim mentality. That was the transition to seek out my healing, to understand what it's like to be whole, to know who I am, to understand who God created me to be. And then to really now over the last 5 years, to really embrace all of my flaws and be authentic in everything that I'm doing and be unapologetic about it.
Girl, you said a few mouthfuls there. Okay, so the first one, of course, is this idea we experience things that have the opportunity, and I'm not saying that people are not victimized,
For sure.
but this idea of deciding that you are no longer going to be a victim is empowering for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't take the blame away from other folks, but it's empowering for you. How did you go through and what brought you there? And I'm sure your faith, I know you're a woman of faith, so I'm sure that was a big
Yes.
part of it. But what are some of the things that got you there that really sealed the deal when you knew? I mean, because nobody wants to feel like a victim. And on the other hand, it's hard to move out of it.
For sure. It's
Yeah.
easy to be the victim. And that's what
Yes.
I tell people. It's so easy to blame somebody else. It's so easy to discard what you're contributing to a matter, if you're contributing anything at all. And I want to make sure that I put preference there because I don't want anybody who has been sexually violated to feel like they have contributed anything to a matter. But the
That's
fact
right.
that you carry that to say that I'm going to be angry and I have a right to be angry or I have a right to not care about men or not do this or not do that is a garment that we are now putting on. And it's saying that's something that we are now contributing to the space of our life. And so for
Yes.
years, I carried the anger. Like I was so bitter. I was so angry. Angry just all the time for no reason. And
Yeah.
it wasn't anybody else's fault that I was angry. It was just because I did not understand how to take and unravel and deal with the feelings and the
Yes.
pain and all the things that I was dealing with internally. And so therapy was amazing for me. I am a woman of faith, but there were times I'll tell you, Pam, I was on the praise and worship team and going home wanting to commit suicide and attempted
Uh,
to once.
Yeah.
Just because I think, and this doesn't speak to everybody, but there was a church culture environment that I was in that made me feel like I had to be perfect, that I had to
Mm.
pray a certain way, that I had to show up a certain way, that I had to look a certain way. And so here I am fighting all these thoughts, these things that are taking place inside of my life where I'm fighting against why I'm the one that's being targeted for the molestation, why I'm the one that's targeted, why am I the one that's always going through all the things? Again, that victim mentality, why me, why me?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then having these voids, having this emptiness, not fully aware of who I am, having all the insecurities, and then not really understanding why I'm even here on this earth or created, and then stepping into a church environment where they're saying, oh, you have to be saved and holy or you're going to hell. And I'm like, but wait, I don't want
Yeah.
to always wear pants. I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And can I love God? And are there any areas like what are all the things? And do I have to pray like that? Am I not saved if I
Yeah.
don't pray like that? It's like just
Yeah.
all the things. And so I'm like, wait a minute, if I'm not perfect enough for the world because I'm being targeted in this space and then I'm not perfect enough for the church, then where's the space for me?
And really, we think of church. By the way, I've been to seminary and I have done the things. So I am a woman of faith also. And yet, and I had this conversation with my sister circle this week. There's been a lot of loss in this season. There tends
Yeah.
to be a lot of loss in this season, anyhow. And somebody said, I'm angry. And I said, yeah. The things that at least I can say, I worship a God that can handle my anger
For
too.
sure. Yes.
And so the perfection thing that we put on each other, I don't know if I believe that God is the author of that. I think that may be
Correct.
something other than God's word.
Yeah,
And because what is it that the creator can't handle?
for sure. For sure.
We need, and that's who we need to take it to. Look, I am not critical. There's always a word and a message in the church, but you also have a personal relationship.
For sure. And I think
Yeah.
that was another pivotal point for me because when I first started, I didn't realize that. I didn't
Yes.
realize
Yeah. Yeah. It's
that,
hard
hey,
to
I
know
could
that
go.
sometimes.
Yeah, it was just we were going to church doing all the things. And again, it's the church culture. Not
Yes.
that is what, Christ is saying, or that's what Jesus, or that's not what
That's right.
he's saying or doing. It's the church culture. And
That's right.
so the moment that I realized that, hey, I could go to him like for myself. It was therapy, and worship saved my life. Like
Yeah.
worship and relationship worship with God saved my entire life. I was telling a client 2 weeks ago, she was like, so how do you do it, Tamika? How do you keep going? Like, are you always as happy? And I'm like, I'm not always as happy, but I have a reassurance and a knowing that I know God is with me. I don't care
Yeah.
what is going on, what is taking place. The fact that he brought me out of the muck of where I was, the mentality that I had, the thoughts that I were having of myself and other people. Listen, I know God is real. I know he could save and I know he can heal. And I
That's
thank
right.
him for he's a deliverer because he really is. And when we don't have that real relationship with him, we don't understand that.
That's
There's a tradition, there's a religion, but then there's a relationship.
Yes, ma'am. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The promise, I think a lot of people, there is also this theology around, and I'm not calling any names or anything, because I think it's in a lot of places, that if your life doesn't look a certain way, that means you're not walking the right way. I don't think my understanding of what I have studied and what I know from my relationship with God, there was never a promise that everything would be perfect and all of that. The promise is that God is with you.
Yeah, always.
God is with us through it all. That's the promise. And that's the hope. And that's the comfort. All of those are the things that are the promise. It's not that you won't have challenges.
Right.
And it's not that God, and I also don't know that I believe that God is punishing me because things happen that I don't like. I think we as human beings have a tendency to label things that, because there's so much. Look, how could we possibly understand the fullness of God? We don't.
Right.
Which is not to say that God doesn't give you, I mean, there's also people that kind of make it into something God doesn't give you more than you can handle, which is hard when you're in a circumstance for somebody to say that to you and brush off all the things you're feeling in a sense. That's what it could feel like.
Yeah.
But the truth is that we can't understand the big picture. We never have. We never will.
Right.
And it's not that God is willing it on you or anything, but there is a divine hand in all that's happening. And sometimes it takes a really long time, but there can be gifts out of every circumstance, no matter how we judge it, good or bad.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. One of the things I loved, I've had an opportunity to look at your book, like I was in a little conversation with some folks that were helping you go through and edit some things.
Yes.
And one of the things I loved about what you are doing in that book is that you are just completely transparent with your flaws and the struggles with all of that as a woman of faith. And I just think that to make space for the conversation, and the truth is, I believe our deepest ministry comes from our challenges and flaws.
Absolutely.
And so if you don't share your journey, and if you miss the opportunity to minister to others. You're like you have put yourself out there in this beautiful way in sharing. And it's also very plain talk, like you're just saying the thing, as opposed to making flowery language around. I just love what you were doing. I don't even know if you fully published yet, but what I saw, I was loving. But tell us a little bit more about that part of your journey and what it was like to craft that story in a book, because you know the story in your head, but then you got to put it on.
Yes, thank you so much. Obedience Over Perfection is the book that I'm birthing. It'll be ready for release in January. We literally just finished proofing the book, and I just literally sent it over to the illustrator for the interior design and the layout of the pages. So we are at the finish line. But I wrote this book for the woman who lost her voice in the noise. I have unapologetically disrupted the table to make room for her. I've pulled up a chair with her name on it, and I'm inviting her to take a seat, to find her voice, and to also step into the purpose that God has placed in her that's imperfect, that's unfiltered, and unashamed. And I did it in a way, now it took me, this book has been about 20 years in the making now.
Yeah, I feel
It's been about 20 years in the making, but only because I had to go, there was something I had to become in order to write this book, right? There were areas that I needed to heal. There were areas where I really needed to be comfortable in who I was. I was just sharing with somebody. I was like, I felt almost schizophrenic almost, because I was one way at work. I was one way in church. I was another way at home. And I was just like, why aren't all of these pieces like a part of me? And why am I so afraid to share up in all these places? And so I had to really be okay with giving myself permission to be judged, because the church culture is real, and the cancer culture in the church, like, listen, I think sometimes that we forget Jesus, they use normal people. They used broken people. There was no doubt in my mind that a lot of the people that the church turns away are the same people that Jesus would have been sitting and talking and dealing with just at a regular level, and not pushing or dismissing them away. And
Jesus goes for the one.
Yeah.
That's the one lost. That is the message. The message
Right.
is the least of us are where you find the most of Jesus and God.
And that's what I think we miss it. And because we miss it, there are so many people who don't feel like they have a place in church. They don't feel like they even have a purpose, that God has given them a purpose. They don't feel like they matter, that they can do anything, or that they have anything that they can offer to God. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, you're the one he came for. That's what are we talking about? So I'm very authentic in the full transparency of the manuscript, with being, and it's a sis. It's like a hey sis moment. I want to take an opportunity not to beat you over the head with the word, not to beat you over the head with the culture, but just to give you a gentle reminder to say, hey, listen, you might not think that you have or that you are enough for what God has for your life. But the reality is, like, you really are okay. Like, you right where you are enough. And he's
That's
not
right.
looking for more.
Never weren't enough.
He's not looking for more. It's the culture that's telling us that we have to be all these other things. All he's looking for is your willingness and your obedience.
That's
And
right.
we want to put it in this package, and we want to make it perfect, and we want it to dot the I's and to cross the T's, and to make it. And he's just, listen, come as you are, boo. That's all you got to do. Come as you are. You're
with an open heart. Come as you are, with an open heart.
Right.
And an open mind and ears. But yes, the open heart. Yes.
The open heart, because it's the heart posture that is that's gonna shift things. It's the heart posture, I believe, that summons the presence.
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's and the heart is where the source of transformation is too.
Yeah.
That's why there's all of these words about a change of heart. A change of heart, because it's that heart space. When the change of heart happens, amazing things can happen.
Yeah. And so I still curse. I still drink wine. And I know people in the church are like, oh my God, but I love God. I love God, and I know he loves me. I'm a worshiper at heart. I know that I'm not perfect. But right now in this season of my life, God is not asking me to be perfect. God is not looking for me to be perfect. He really is looking for my heart posture. And he's reminded me throughout just writing this manuscript in this book of all the different people, like Peter. He knew Peter was going to deny him, yet he still brought him into the circle. And it was one of the innermost circles, like the closest circle with him. He knew that Peter had this temper. Like, Peter wasn't no perfect person. He knew all
none of us walking this earth are. But let me just say, none of us are.
None of us are. And so I think we miss it, because I'm just like, wait a minute. If God used them, why can't he use you? What makes you different because you smoke or you do what? Listen, come with a heart posture, willing to say, God, here I am. And then allow God to do that work in you. So I have made it a point, again, over these so my husband's a pastor. I'm a pastor's wife.
Yes.
And so a part of, again, giving myself permission to be judged was, what are people going to say? What are people going to think?
My dad was a preacher's kid, and that is a fishbowl type experience that's not for everyone, and it's not for the faint of heart. So I understand how deep your work has had to be.
Yeah.
In order to get to the place where you are prepared to be fully transparent. Let me be clear.
Yes. Because it's there. It's out there. Fully it is. I said, oh, there's no going back. I said, this one, Tamika. Yes. And the prayer is, again, that other women are able to see themselves through this book. I got an audio message today from somebody, one of the passion pushers who's reading the book. And she was just like, sis, oh my God, like the level of transparency. And she didn't even get the full manuscript. It was just the intro and the first chapter. And she was just like, the level of transparency. I now know why God placed you in my life, because I need other women to know that you don't have to be perfect in this season. All you have to do is be. and allow God to
We
do the
never did
rest.
have to be. And it's not only the church culture, the whole culture tells women that we have to be perfect on the outside and all of the things. And we've never had to be perfect. We just have to be authentic to our soul's purpose.
And obedient.
That's the only other part of it I would add. It's authentic to the soul's purpose, which often is not. If you don't take the time to pause, that's why I say we pause long enough to hear the truth beneath the noise at the beginning. I heard you talk about pausing too. But if we don't pause, we never can hear that's the voice of our soul. The soul's voice is one of the quietest voices in your head, unless you're in danger. And if you're in danger, it will try to protect you that way. The soul's voice is quiet. And if you don't listen, it will get quieter and quieter. So it's up to us. I know this thing about being chosen is in scripture. And from my perspective, chosen is not so much about God. God created all of us. The chosen part is about us choosing.
Yeah.
When we choose, we become chosen in that sense, to me, because we have to choose to listen to the voice. We have to choose to have the conversations with God and all of that.
And every day is a choice, right?
Every
day I was telling my client, every day I have to choose God. Moments throughout the day, I have to choose God. Right. It's a choice. And we all have the liberty and the opportunity and the ability to choose. And so every day it's a choice. It's not like I woke up one day and, this is this for the rest of my life. No, every day, every moment, I am choosing to honor God with my life. I am choosing to be obedient because it's not always easy. And that's the thing too, right? It's not always easy to say yes, because sometimes that yes looks a little messy. Like people will see in this book, the yes sometimes is a little messy. The yes
it's a lot messy a lot of the time, and it makes no sense. And it makes no sense because we can't understand the fullness of the picture. It makes no sense in the context of what we know.
None. And so that is a part of the, okay, God, but I'm choosing you still because I'm trusting you with my life. I'm trusting you that I know you're not going to leave me. I know you're not going to forsake me. And I know that whatever this is, I know it's going to work out for my good because God, you are with me. Yeah.
That's right. Tell us a little bit more about some of the myths that you had to release in order to start to live this way, because I know there has to be plenty of those.
Oh my gosh, some of the myths, right?
You mentioned one, which is that idea that we have to be perfect.
Yeah, so for sure,
you covered a big one.
I think one of the biggest things, but then also another thing was that like you had to have all, and it aligns with the perfect, but the different certifications and the different, we want to go and put all these things, we go and attend all these seminars and workshops and conferences and do all these things. I'm just like, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. God didn't ask us to do all of that. He's strongest in our weakness. And so
and we have an ordained purpose that has nothing to do with all those certifications.
Right. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And so
it might, I'm not going to say it never does, because my personal circumstances, I have a finance degree and an economics degree. And people were like, when are you going to seminary? And I was like, I am not going back to school for 10 years. So yeah, sometimes it has to do with it, but then the cosmic 2x4 finally hit me over the head. But it doesn't, but the ordained purpose is not, it's not about the certifications. It's about walking the narrow path, which is when you're listening, that's the narrow path. It's not all these rules and regs externally guiding us. It's about listening. That's the narrow path.
And then another myth was that I have to know the Bible front and backwards. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. Okay, there are people who know, and let me give context, right? I'm not saying you don't have to know the Bible, or it's not good to not, like, you want to know the Bible. You want to know what's inside of the Bible, but that is not a requirement for you to move in purpose. That was one of the things that was stopping me for so long, especially when my husband, oh my gosh, he's been pastoring full time now for 5 years. And when he first told me, I was like, I'm not ready, babes. I'm not ready to be a pastor's wife. And he was just like, babes, what do you mean? What do you think are the requirements? And I was just like, I'm not wearing hats. I'm not wearing shoulder pads. I like some distressed ripped jeans and some cute heels and some tights. Like, I'm just not as a pastor's wife. And I don't want to have to change to become that. He was like, I'm not asking you to. I was just like, but are you sure everybody's going to be okay with that? And he was just like, I just need you to be you. And I was just like, okay, let's work on this. Just being me. When I tell you, I have loved and grown to love like this version of who I am. And I don't have to wear a skirt to be in the church. I don't have to, which is what some churches, like the women wear dresses and long skirts. And I'm just like, yeah, that ain't me. Like this, and it's not a requirement.
Yeah.
So that was,
I'm pretty sure it's not a God requirement. I can't say for the culture, but for the God, I'm pretty sure we can do our thing.
Yeah. So no, it's definitely not a requirement. Not for God, for sure. But that was a thing that I had to overcome, right? My attire, how I looked. And then also knowing the Bible, because again, there are people who know the Bible, who know scripture, but they don't apply it. They don't live it. It's not a part of who they are. And I'd rather know little pieces of it and apply the small little pieces of it than be a Bible toting Bama.
Yeah. So, and it's a living word. It is a living word.
Yeah.
The word is a living word. And so it has application to life and the present day. And so we always have to walk with that in our mind, as well as none of us are perfect and none of us have the perfect idea of what God wants from us. But all we have to do is keep trying our hardest and understand these things.
Yeah.
Can you share some specific anchors and practices that may help you ground yourself during your transition times and times when you don't really know when you're between what was and what's next? That's what I always call it.
Worship. So I am a worshiper at heart. And in those moments, in those seasons, God deals with me whenever I'm getting ready to go through a transition. There's a lot of noise that's taking place, a lot of things that are taking place. And then there's like this plateau. And I know that there's a lot more pressure right before the next level of elevation. And I know that to be cycles for me in my life. And so when it gets to that point where the noise is like chaotic, one of the things that I do is I look around in my personal environment. Is there like a lot of mess? Is there like a lot of clutter? I free all that clutter space and I just worship. And when I say worship, like I really am finding that place of just being with God, being in God, in his presence, so that I can find that stability to just anchor me, because otherwise I'm going back and fro. There's too much chaos going on. And I have PTSD from being in the Pentagon during 9/11. And so for me, when I tell people that worship saved my life, like God meets me in the worship. And if I ever get to a point in my life where I don't hear God or God doesn't meet me in my worship, like I don't know what's going to happen. Because God meets me there and he speaks to me there and he speaks to me in my writing. And so when I worship, he's oftentimes giving me something to write about or to journal about. And it's an instruction, it's a direction, it's something for the next phase that's going to prepare me for where he's leading me. And that's always been true for my life. Yes.
Yeah. And so the times when God's not listening, we call the dark night of the soul, because those feel really dark for sure. I think I've had a couple experiences that have felt like that for sure. And the thing is that I'm here to tell you that if you keep listening, God hasn't gone anywhere. We just weren't quite ready for whatever reason to hear what it is. But that's the hardest. The waiting on the Lord part of the journey is the hardest part.
It is the hardest part. Yeah.
For sure. That's the part that we all need help navigating, and a community to navigate it with, so that we can stay the course.
Yeah. For sure. But it definitely is worship in the presence of God, only because that has been anchoring. Some people, they can go to the word of God, but I literally cannot go to the word of God without being able to like have some type, like I can go, but I don't get the revelation unless I have just come from worship. He really does meet me. He speaks to me there. Yeah. That's
beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a real talk question and let you answer. What's a question that you're currently living into at the moment?
That I'm currently living into.
So you don't have the answer, but you know the question's arisen and you're kind of...
I don't know if there's a question you said that I'm currently living in.
Yeah. So for me, I'll tell you what mine is and maybe it'll help you. And if not, that's okay. You don't have to have an answer. You may not be living into a question. But for me, it's how to attract the community, the team, to do the work at the end of the day.
So for me, I don't know that it's a question. I will say, I'll lead with this, and maybe hopefully I'll lead with this. I released a gospel album back in 2006. It was a praise and worship album.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal. God breathed over it. Like it was much bigger than what we ever thought that it was going to be as an independent Christian artist. And I lost my way through that process. I went in with leading with God in relationship. There was a place and a time where I found myself where it shifted from the worship and honoring God to the performance of man and people. It was the scariest thing of my life, and probably another reason why it took me so long to write this book, because it really scared me. I know some people will say that God doesn't take his glory, but there was a shift that I really felt like God's glory was removed from my life in that
Yeah.
moment. And I did not want to sing anymore. I gave it all up. I was like, I'm done. I was carrying my daughter at the time. She was not about the studio life. My son, who is 25, he grew up in the studio. So he was okay. He was accustomed to that. But my daughter, she was
Yeah.
very different. And so I was like, all right,
Yeah.
this is that season. This is that time. I'm done. And I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to do praise and worship anymore. Didn't want to sing, didn't want to do anything. And if I have a question, my question, and I don't even know if it's a question or if it's a statement more.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
my thing right now in this season is, God, not only do I no longer want to shrink, because I also had a thing of shrinking because I didn't know who I was. But I no longer want to go back to shrinking. But my thing with God is, God, please hold me and keep me anchored so that I never have to go back and experience that again. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead of God. I don't want to get in front of God. I don't want his glory. And I do not want to be in a place to where it then becomes about performing for the people ever again in my life. So I don't know if
Wow.
it's a question more than it is a statement, because I don't ever want to experience that.
No, that's beautiful. And in fact, you said it in a slightly different way before, and I had meant to ask you this or have this part of the conversation with you, but you brought me back because visibility, in order to do the work, not for everyone,
Yeah.
but some of us, and I know you're one of them, I can tell by what I know about you. And I know that I'm one too. Some of us, the type of work that our soul purpose is calling us to do requires visibility.
Yeah.
And because people have to know what you're doing, it's another level of responsibility. It's another level of risk. It's truly risk. When
Yeah.
you put yourself out there, it is a risky thing because we know what the world likes to do. They'll cheer you up the mountain, and as soon as you have one misstep, they will punish you deeply. And so having that anchor with your spiritual life is probably the only way to do this. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be easy, but the only way to do the visibility piece well is to have that anchor so deep that nothing can really shake you.
Yeah.
And so we just have to keep going deeper. I keep telling my people, I'm like, the only thing I can tell you in this moment, and it's not even just about visibility. This is a moment, if it wasn't clear before, that we need to be trying to go deeper.
For sure.
Yeah. Not skirting this. We can't skirt the surface anymore. We have to go deeper in order to bring ourselves the clarity to move with purpose in the way that we need to preserve what we want for our kids. That's all I can say about it. That's another whole conversation. And we're almost at 40 minutes, so we can't start that one. I want to have that one with you though.
Yes, I would love to. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're drawing to a close here, and I want to ask, how can our listeners find you and support your work?
Yeah, so I am Temeka Thompson on Instagram, on TikTok, and Facebook. And then also YouTube as well. Unlock Her Next. I have a podcast that's listed on YouTube under Unlock Her Next. And it really is unlocking the next opportunity, the next thing that God has for you in your life, because we are unlocking things. This is the season for us to move boldly. There is a nation of women waiting for our yes. And I think that the reason why this book burns so much inside of me is because I need us to know that we don't need to do anything else. You are enough who you are. There's a nation of women waiting for your yes. The moment that you surrender and say yes, and your heart posture surrenders, and you are in full obedience with what God has for your life,
that's right.
It's going to shift, and you're going to be so amazed with how he's going to show up. And all you did was give him a yes. Allow him to do everything else.
That's right. That's right. All you have to, as I say to people, and I even have some faithful people try to correct me, but I always say, no, I said what I meant. I said, all I know how to do in this work is to respond to what's in front of me. They're like, no, but you mean I said, no, I'm telling you what I mean. The only thing I know to do in my walk with God is respond to what's in front of me, because I can make a plan all I want to, because people tell me you need to plan. And yeah, but I make a plan and it never turns out the way that I expected to. And yet it's much better, much easier.
Yeah.
The yoke is easy. The burden's light when you walk this way. And it doesn't mean that there's not work. There's hard work, but it's always much simpler in many respects than what I could have planned in my little head.
For sure. And what I've noticed is once we go from the hustle to the strategy to the street to all the things, and we actually sit and wait for God's provision, that's where he gives us all the next. Like when you think of Jacob, when he was at the well and God had blessed him to the capacity that he was able to bless him with, it was time for him to move. He wasn't looking to move. He wasn't looking to expand anywhere, but God had blessed him to the capacity where he could bless him in that space. And so he had to go and seek God at every level to be able to get God's provision. And he was like, God's not here. This is not God. And he had to go until he was able to find God. Once he was able to meet God at that particular, God then gave him provision where he then blessed him beyond what he could even ever try to think of or strategize or come up on his own. And so I think, again, that's the culture of just life where we feel, because I was there. I got to hustle. I got to do this. I got to do that. And just spinning wheels. When we serve a God who's a God of provision, who will give us the next and will show us and will guide us the next. And so, yeah, the provision is much better than the strategy any day.
Yeah, but the waiting's hard. Look, waiting
is hard.
The waiting part, I have been walking from my perspective closely for a long time. And the waiting's always hard, and it always feels too long. And you're always like at the edge of about to break, and then the breakthrough comes. But yeah. Tamika, thank you so much for being here. This is a beautiful conversation just about possibilities. It's just so important, the word that you're sharing, which is that you are enough now, and all you need to do is step up and lean in.
Yeah.
And God has you.
He's got you. Yeah. It's obedience over perfection. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
For sure.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate you. I love you so much.
We'll have you back too. I'm sure you'll be back. I don't know when, but I'm sure you'll be back. So if you give me one more second, we'll just close out here with a brief invitation for the audience. If today's episode spoke to you, I invite you to reflect on this question. What's one soul-aligned step I can take from here? And as always, subscribe, share this with someone who's standing at their own threshold, and join us again for the next soul synced moment.
What if retirement wasn't a finish line, but a sacred beginning? Women Don't Retire is a call to reimagine your next chapter with purpose, power, and joy. I share real stories, deep truths, and practical wisdom for women ready to lead, even after leaving the title behind. Available now where books are sold. See the show notes for a link to get your copy today.
Take a breath with me. A real one. Not rushed, not shallow, but the kind that meets you exactly where you are and reminds you you are already enough. In this conversation with Temeka Thompson, we touched something sacred. We talked about transitions, the in-between spaces where identity shifts, purpose expands, and everything you thought you knew gets rearranged. We talked about the myth of perfection and what it means to show up as your authentic self, even when the path is unclear, even when you're still healing. Tamika reminded us that obedience to your calling, to your spirit, and to the whisper of God is more powerful than performing perfection. And that obedience begins not with striving, but with listening. So here's your soul sync invitation. What transition are you currently standing inside of? What part of you is being invited to surrender
not in weakness, but in trust. And what would it look like to obey the quiet instruction of your spirit, even if no one else understands it yet? Maybe it's time to release the story that says you have to be polished to be powerful. Maybe it's time to grieve what was so that you can welcome what's being born. Maybe it's time to pause and just listen. Because in the silence, there's wisdom. In the detour, there's direction. And in the surrender, there's strength. You don't have to get it all right. You just have to be willing. Willing to be real. Willing to be seen. Willing to take that next faithful step. Your becoming is sacred. And the transitions you face aren't tests of your worth. They're invitations into deeper alignment. So let this season be less about control and more about communion. Less about perfection and more about presence. Until next time, may you continue to live soul first.
If this episode stirred something in your soul, if you felt seen, softened, or simply supported, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to leave a review. Your words help other women, especially those at a sacred threshold, find this space. It only takes a minute, but your review becomes part of the ripple. Thank you for listening. Thank you for syncing with your soul.